A hospital emergency brought out my husband's true colors. As I lay unconscious, he used my signature to sign over our joint bank account to his mother. When I woke up, she sat beside me, smiling. "You're penniless now." A nurse walked in and said, "Actually, she's not the one with nothing left." The look on their faces was priceless. I, 45 female, used to believe I was living a normal, stable life. Married for 20 years. No kids. Decent jobs. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I've been with Mark since college. We met at the University of Texas at Austin. We clicked fast. Got married after graduation and stayed in Austin ever since. Over the years, we built what I thought was a strong life. We had a modest but cozy home in North Austin, 2 cars, savings, investments, and a joint bank account. Everything was shared. Or so I thought. This happened last year. It still feels unreal. It was a Saturday, hot as hell in Texas. I was home alone doing normal stuff. Laundry, checking emails, planning groceries. Mark said he was going to visit his mom, who lives 30 minutes away in Round Rock. I didn't think anything of it. He visits her often. That afternoon, I suddenly felt this intense pain in my head. Like someone cracked my skull with a bat. I barely had time to grab my phone before everything went black. I collapsed in our hallway. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed, barely able to move my head. My mouth was dry, and I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Machines were beeping. There was an 4 in my arm. My vision was blurry, but I saw someone sitting beside me. It was Mark's mom. Margaret. She was smiling. That same fake-ass smile she always gave me at family gatherings, the kind that never reaches the eyes. She leaned in and said, well, look who finally woke up. I could barely speak. I just croaked out, "What happened?" "You had a brain aneurysm," she said, like it was no big deal. "You're lucky they got to you in time." My head was pounding. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. I was so confused. Why was she here and not Mark? I asked her. She just said he was taking care of things. I drifted in and out for a couple of days. Every time I woke up, Margaret was there. Not Mark. Just her. Nurses came and went, checked my vitals, gave me meds. I could barely speak the first 2 days, and she always found some excuse not to let the nurses talk to me for long. It didn't take long to notice that something was off. My phone was missing. My purse too. Every time I asked where Mark was, she changed the subject. On day 3, I was finally strong enough to ask a nurse what the hell was going on. She glanced at Margaret and said she'd come back later when things were quieter. Later that evening, Margaret sat down beside me with a smile that made my skin crawl. She said, "I should tell you what's been going on while you've been resting." I said nothing. I was just listening. Dreading. She went on, "Mark had to make a lot of decisions while you were unconscious. The hospital needed payments. Bills were coming in. So, we took care of it. He used your signature to access your joint account." Used my signature. I blinked. What? "He transferred everything out of that account and gave it to me," she said, smug as hell. "It was just easier. You were in no state to make financial decisions." I stared at her in complete disbelief. "You forged my name?" She actually laughed. "Mark did what he had to do. You were half dead. The money's safe now. With me." And then she leaned in closer and whispered, "You're penniless now. But hey, at least you're still breathing." I don't remember what I said back. Maybe nothing. I just remember feeling sick. My head was spinning again, but this time it wasn't medical. It was betrayal. Deep, sharp, burning betrayal. That's when something happened I will never forget. A nurse walked into the room. She was young, calm, holding a clipboard. She looked at both of us and said, "Actually, she's not the one with nothing left." Margaret's face dropped. "Excuse me?" The nurse walked over and checked my 4. "I heard what you said," she said, looking directly at Margaret. "And I need you to know something. The hospital has strict policies. We document everything. And we don't accept forged signatures on financial authorizations." Margaret turned pale. The nurse added, "Your son forged a legal document while his wife was unconscious. That's fraud. It's already been reported." Margaret tried to speak, but nothing came out. She got up fast and stormed out of the room. The nurse stayed with me, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. I asked her, "What do I do now?" She said quietly, "Rest. You've got a long road ahead. But you're not alone. We've seen cases like this before. And trust me, this won't end well for them." I later learned that not only did they try to empty our joint account, but Mark also attempted to change the beneficiary on my life insurance. They assumed I'd die in that hospital bed. I didn't. And now, well, let's just say things are about to get very real. After Margaret stormed out, I lay there staring at the ceiling, heart racing. Everything I knew about my life, about Mark, was falling apart. I wasn't angry yet. I was still in shock. But something inside me was waking up. Something cold. Focused. The nurse, her name was Danny, came back in with a file. "I'm sorry," she said, gently. "I know this is overwhelming. But there's something you should see." She handed me a copy of a form, one I supposedly signed. My signature was on it, but it wasn't mine. It looked close, but not enough to fool me. I nodded slowly. "That's fake." She gave a short nod. Exactly what I thought. I flagged it. Turns out, Danny had been suspicious the moment Margaret started acting like she ran the place. She said Mark was pushy, weirdly confident, and insisted on handling all the bills privately. Most families are stressed or worried. Mark? He acted like he was closing on a house deal. That's what saved me. Danny followed hospital protocol and filed a report. When their accounting department saw inconsistencies, they froze the access. That's when Margaret and Mark panicked and tried to push harder. But here's the twist. This wasn't just about the hospital bills. Mark and Margaret had cleaned out everything, not just the joint savings. They emptied our investment account, tried to sell the second car, and even filed a change of address form to reroute my mail to Margaret's house. They thought I was going to die. I think that's what still hits me the hardest. My husband, my supposed partner, looked at me unconscious in that hospital bed and thought, "Great, now's my chance." And just when I thought I'd heard it all, Danny pulled out one last document. It was a copy of a life insurance claim. "They filed this 2 days ago," she said. "But it bounced back. They used an outdated policy number. We contacted the provider. They said the policy is under investigation now." That's when the anger hit me. Hot and alive. He tried to cash out on my death. My hands shook as I held that paper. It didn't even feel real. Like I was reading someone else's nightmare. But it was mine. I asked Danny for my phone. She said the hospital still had it. It had been turned in by the EMTs. Mark never touched it. He probably forgot I kept it in my pocket. She brought it to me. I turned it on, hands trembling. And there it was. Voicemail after voicemail from Mark. All from the first day I was out. Then nothing. I checked my texts. Same thing. A few panicked messages at the start, then radio silence. The last message I got from him was 3 days after I went in. "Mark, hey. They said you might wake up soon. Let's talk when you're ready. There's a lot to explain. But it was all for the best, okay? The best for who?" I didn't reply. I wasn't ready. I needed a plan. And that's when I remembered something important. Before all this happened, just a few weeks back, I'd opened a personal checking account. It was a spur-of-the-moment thing. I'd started freelancing on the side and figured I should keep it separate for tax reasons. Mark didn't know about it. I hadn't even told him I was freelancing again. The balance wasn't huge, just over $4,800. But right then, it felt like $1 million. It meant I wasn't completely powerless. That account became my lifeline. I asked Danny to help me get in touch with a social worker. She connected me to a legal advisor the hospital keeps on retainer. She came in the next day, a sharp, quiet woman named Tasha. I told her everything. She didn't even blink. Just started taking notes and said, "We'll get a restraining order started. But you need to move fast." By the time I was discharged, the report had been filed. The hospital had frozen any insurance claim activity. My accounts were being reviewed. And thanks to Danny, there was a digital trail. Emails, notes, security logs. Mark and Margaret had been watched the whole time, and they didn't even know it. But just when I thought the worst of it was behind me, something new dropped. Tasha told me someone had tried to gain access to my medical records outside the hospital network. Someone using Mark's name and ID tried to log in remotely through a patient portal I'd never even used. She said they were trying to get full power of attorney while you were unconscious. They needed your full medical file to build the paperwork. They weren't just stealing money. They were trying to erase me. After I found out about the attempted access to my medical records, things started clicking together. This wasn't panic. This wasn't, we needed to pay some bills desperation. This was planned. Mark and Margaret weren't reacting to a crisis, they had been waiting for one. I remembered a moment, maybe 2 months before the aneurysm. Mark had encouraged me to change my primary doctor to one closer to home. Convenience, he said. But he picked the doctor. A new one I'd never met, part of a clinic I never liked. I didn't go. I kept seeing my old physician. Now I wonder, if I had switched, would that have made it easier for him to mess with my records? Another twist hit 2 days after I got discharged. I stayed at a small, extended stay suite on the edge of town, quiet, nothing fancy. It was all I could manage without going home. I wasn't going anywhere near that house yet. Tasha, the legal advisor, called me. You need to hear this, she said. She told me that a friend of hers at the bank flagged something odd. A few days after I collapsed, Mark filed for a mortgage loan using my name and credit. Not a refinance, a separate mortgage application. For a duplex in Waco. Why Waco? It made no sense. Until I looked into the property. It was owned by a woman named Nancy, an old friend of Margaret's. Widowed. No kids. Guess who was listed on the buyer info as joint resident? Margaret. They were planning to move. Not just move, start over. Together. With money they thought they could siphon from everything Mark and I built. My savings. My investments. My credit. And they were already prepping a new life in someone else's name, mine. I felt sick. I knew Mark had secrets, but I never imagined he'd plan an entire exit strategy in case I died. But the worst came later. Late one night, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. A man's voice. Raspy. Nervous. Hey, this is James. I used to do maintenance on that duplex in Waco. Margaret gave me your number by accident, I think. Said to send updates here. But I looked up the name and, if you're her daughter-in-law, you should know she's been telling people you passed. That Mark's widowed. They told the neighbors you died last month. I played that message 5 times. They were telling people I was dead. And not just anyone. Neighbors. People who might come around. Ask questions. Try to contact me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized. The forgery, the bank transfers, the insurance claim, they weren't loose stabs in the dark. They were trying to erase me. But they didn't expect me to live. They didn't expect Danny the nurse to catch the forged signature. They definitely didn't expect me to have a secret bank account. And now, they really didn't expect what I was planning next. Because remember that phone Mark never touched? The one I had with me when I collapsed? I'd had a backup text-to-cloud service running automatically. Every call, every voicemail, every photo, every email. Guess what else it saved? Every call Mark made to his mother while I was unconscious on speakerphone when he stood at my hospital bedside and talked about how long it might take and whether the hospital might unplug her soon. He never turned off the speaker. And guess what? My phone mic picked up everything. I didn't sleep that night. I listened to every voicemail, every phone call. I could hear them laughing, planning. Margaret telling Mark she already found curtains for the new house. Mark saying, once they pull the plug, we can close the deal. They thought I wouldn't wake up. They thought I'd just vanish. But I did wake up. And now I had proof. The next day, I went straight to Tasha with my phone. She helped me back everything up. Every recording. Every text. Every document. We handed it all to her contact at the local DA's office. The woman didn't say much. Just listened and nodded. When she was done, she said, This might be one of the dirtiest cases I've seen involving a spouse. We filed everything. Forgery, fraud, attempted identity theft, insurance fraud, and possible attempted manslaughter. That last one? That one got attention. Because here's where I made my mistake, and yeah, I'll own this part. I had ignored red flags for years. Mark never respected me financially. Always said I wasn't good with numbers. Margaret always acted like I was some temporary obstacle between her son and his future. And me? I wanted peace. I avoided conflict. That's what nearly got me killed. But no more. The DA's office moved fast. I didn't hear from Mark or Margaret for 3 days. Then one afternoon, I got a text. Mark, I know you're mad, but please let's talk. Everything's out of control now. I didn't reply. The next day, they both got arrested. Charges were filed. I watched it live on the local news. Margaret was screaming at reporters outside her house. Mark was quiet, head down, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. They were charged with multiple felonies. Identity theft, forgery, fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. That last one? That hit the hardest. Because that's what I'd been reduced to in their eyes. A vulnerable adult. The cherry on top? The bank reversed the transfers. The investments were frozen and then released back to me after a lengthy audit. The mortgage they tried to open? Cancelled. Their new life in Waco? Gone. I sold our house. Not out of fear. Out of choice. I wanted a fresh start. I left Austin, took my money, and moved out to Colorado. Quieter. Safer. Cleaner air, literally and mentally. Mark and Margaret? They took plea deals. They'll both serve time. Not decades, but enough. And now they're broke. Their assets seized. Their reputations ruined. And me? I built a new life. I kept that same side freelance gig. Now it's my full-time job. I donate to the hospital where Danny works. I even funded part of the legal fund that helps other women in financial abuse cases. But here's the real ending. A few weeks ago, I got a letter. Handwritten. From Margaret. In it, she said, "You were never supposed to wake up. But I guess even the universe makes mistakes." She still doesn't think she did anything wrong. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because while she rots in a prison cell, sharing a bunk bed with someone who probably can't stand her, I'm sitting on a porch in the Rockies, wrapped in a blanket, drinking coffee I bought with my money, in a home with my name on it. She tried to erase me. Now she's the one no one remembers.